People tell me it's in poor taste to make light of a serial killer, and to that I would say, I presume it's their first time watching this channel. Alfred Hitchcock was a master filmmaker, and there was something about the story of a deranged killer that spoke to him. Not that I'm judging. Let's look at a landmark film from the master of suspense, Psycho. In the 1950s, Alfred Hitchcock was huge. I don't mean to fat shame the man, but his films were some of the most successful and influential films of that decade, with classics like Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, and North by Northwest to his name. At the same time, he fronted his own mystery anthology TV series, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. But by 1960, he wanted to do something a little different, a touching family drama about the relationship between mother and son.
By candlelight, I suppose, in the cheap, erotic fashion of young men with cheap, erotic minds.
Mother, please.
Hitchcock had read Robert Bloch's 1959 novel Psycho and wanted to make it as a film. Specifically, he wanted to make it as the last film in his deal with Paramount before he moved to Universal Studios. He was always interested in the macabre, and he thought it would be interesting if someone good made a horror film. Psycho would be cheap for a Hitchcock film, with a budget of less than $1 million, and would be made in black and white, because of all the blood he was intending to use in one particular scene. Psycho is basically a jump scare slasher film made by an A-list director at the top of his game. Unlike now, where a low-budget horror director can get a shot at directing huge summer blockbusters. Psycho starts off with Marion being in a bad afternoon delight type relationship with Sam. He's still paying alimony to his ex and working in a hardware store, and he feels he can't marry her anytime soon. Marion, he sounds a keeper. Marion has an opportunity to embezzle $40,000 and decides, sure, why the hell not, and does a runner with the cash, leaving behind a trail of suspicious people that even Inspector Clouseau could follow without too much difficulty.
Am I acting as if there's something wrong?
Frankly, yes.
Marion pulls off the road to avoid bad weather and ends up at the Bates Motel, a little out-of-the-way place with no TripAdvisor reviews, which sounds good until you realise why. The motel is run by young Norman Bates. He's fairly charming and easygoing, and he was doing really well with Marion, apart from his mum apparently screaming at him from their house overlooking the motel.
You have the guts, boy?
Shut up! Shut up!
And his love of taxidermy wasn't doing him any favours either. I mean, red flags abound, but whatever.
My hobby is stuffing things.
Marion decides she's going to return home and face the music, but instead is brutally murdered in the shower. So halfway in, the film's apparent protagonist ends up in a puddle on the shower floor, murdered by Norman's mother, I suppose. We'll stop and talk about this one iconic scene, since it's referenced everywhere. The music, the camera work, the editing and the acting from Janet Leigh, it's all pretty brutal. But it's also one of only 2 killings in this movie. A modern viewer accustomed to slasher films and torture porn might find it a bit passé, but then modern viewers watch any old shit on Netflix. Meanwhile, Marion's sister Leigh and now ex Sam start searching for Marion, tipped off by private investigator Arbogast, who's followed Marion's trail to the Bates Motel. Arbogast finds Norman to be, let's just say, not the most reliable witness. He updates Leigh and Sam, but wants to try and interview Mrs. Bates without Norman, and, well, that doesn't go very well.
Your detective told you he couldn't come right back because he was going to question Norman Bates's mother, right?
Yes.
Norman Bates's mother has been dead and buried for the past 10 years.
Sam and Leigh show up at the Bates Motel.
You're alone here, aren't you? Drive me crazy.
I think that would be a rather extreme reaction, don't you?
Sam distracts Norman while Leigh sneaks up to the house to find Mrs. Bates in the basement.
Mrs. Bates.
Oh dear. And then Mrs. Bates attacks. Oh dear. If the murders weren't enough, all of this is pretty shocking for a mainstream film from 1960 by one of Hollywood's top directors. And of course, there's a lengthy epilogue where a psychiatrist has to explain Norman's mental state to people like Ted and Ethel in the audience. Ted and Ethel, you so stupid.
Did he kill my sister?
Yes. And no.
Psycho is unique for an older film, especially a film about a person with serious mental issues, in that rather than explain away something in a line or two, there's an entire scene about it at the end of the film, almost like the drawing room scene in a whodunit, except we all know it was Norman. Or was it his mother? Or both? Psycho was a massive hit and was Hitchcock's biggest grossing film over the course of his career, but it also turned out to be his creative peak. The stark black and white camera work combined with Bernard Herrmann's strident string soundtrack is one of the most enduring films of all time. Even if you've never seen Psycho, you've seen the shower scene, or a parody of it, or something where the screeching strings from that scene are used to denote a brutal psychotic attack.
My mother, what is the phrase? She isn't quite herself today.
Anthony Perkins' turn as Norman is sensitive and nuanced. He's confident and shy all at the same time when speaking with Marion, nervous when speaking with those investigating her disappearance. He doesn't fall into the trap of faux insane, laughing like a lunatic, clicking fingers, like every bad performance from an actor thinking they could win an Oscar by clicking their fingers a lot. The film works because it's not obvious that Norman is the killer. Sorry, spoiler. And because Perkins was so damn good.
Oh, God! Mother! Blood! Blood!
My personal favourite scene in the movie happens after the shower scene, where Norman cleans up after the murder and disposes of the evidence, Marion's body, her car and her belongings, by dumping them in a lake, and Norman eats candy corn while it sinks. Janet Leigh was, let's just say, Hitchcock's type.
All right.
A glamorous blonde who would do what he said. Hitchcock was very controlling of his leading ladies, and opinion is divided on the level of skeeziness on display. It was apparently variable skeeze, depending on the film and the actress. It was clear Hitchcock would have been happy just to use Grace Kelly over and over again, but she had moved to Europe and changed her name to Princess just to avoid working with him. Vera Miles as Marion's sister and John Gavin aren't quite in the same league as Leigh and Perkins, but they fill their roles well enough. Ever-reliable Martin Balsam turns in a very good performance as Arbogast.
My mother's doctor gave them to me the day of my wedding. Teddy was furious when he found out I'd taken tranquilizers.
Oh, and Hitch cast his daughter Pat as Marion's co-worker.
He was flirting with you. I guess he must have noticed my wedding ring.
Alfred Hitchcock liked to cameo in his movies, and it's usually a treat to spot these incongruous... Never mind. Psycho was for a long time just one film, until somebody decided to stick Anthony Perkins in some belated sequels in the 80s, and then there was the infamous 1998 remake by Gus Van Sant, which was a shot-for-shot remake, and proved why you should never do a shot-for-shot remake, because otherwise, what's the goddamn point? More recently, there was the prequel series Bates Motel, about Mrs. Bates and a teenage Norman, which seemed popular enough to run a few seasons. People can't get enough of Psycho. So much so that there was even a film about the making of Psycho, Hitchcock, starring Anthony Hopkins as Hitchcock, and Helen Mirren as his wife, Alma Reville. Alma is considered by film historians as one of Hitchcock's most important advisors. Alfred Hitchcock was known as Hitch to his friends, and was also the subject of another biopic, Hitch, starring Will Smith as Alfred Hitchcock. Psycho was the most successful film of Hitchcock's career, and probably the most profitable since he financed it himself and owned a significant chunk of the movie.
He feels a little chill.
He would never again make a film quite so down and dirty as this, reverting to his usual big-budget self-after, but never came close to topping Psycho's cultural impact. Even if you've never seen the film, you've seen the film. You know a lot about it just through pop culture osmosis, which can be fatal if not treated properly. Hitchcock made many films after this, but many of those, the birds aside, are relatively forgettable. Psycho is still a very unique film, both for the director and studio films of the time. You know how the film ends for Marion and for Norman, yet every time you watch it, you think they might just get away with it this one time. It's a film that you need to see at some point, even if you do end up rooting for, well, a psycho. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.